Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for coming out to sit in on this conversation with us. As you're a man of the cloth, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to let you lead us in a prayer to start it. Make sure to pray for wisdom, please.
Absolutely.
We'll go from there.
Let's pray. We're so grateful to have this opportunity to spend this time, Lord, knowing that you're with us and knowing that you'll direct the conversation. And Lord, we think of the prayer and the words that you tell us in Ephesians to pray for understanding, knowledge, and wisdom, Lord. And so as you guide and direct the conversation, I thank you, Lord, that you're with us and that you'll allow us to speak truth in such a way, Lord, that it'll not just impact the conversation, but it can impact a community, Lord. And we trust that through this, that you'll be glorified and that it'll advance your kingdom, Lord. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So tonight is mainly for people to get a better understanding of who Dan Williams is. I am here to help try to guide the conversation the best that I can. But it's not meant to learn about me necessarily and my politics and all of that. It's really to focus on Dan, why he's running for mayor, what his values are, what his vision for the city of Fort Smith is. I'll probably chime in a little bit where I'd like to hear a little bit more, or maybe press him to elaborate more on some of the things. But all in all, tonight's really about him, not me. Think of this as an organic conversation with someone trying to get to know a candidate to be able to make an informed decision in November. So that'll be the spirit of the conversation this evening. I did want to start off asking you from that vantage point, for those who may not be that familiar with you, I think I've only got to meet you in passing maybe once or twice at this point.
Yes.
So that would include me in that. If you wouldn't mind, give us a little bit of an overview about who Dan is. Go through a little bit about what led you into service, what led you into the private sector after that, and then ultimately into work that you're kind of doing today. And we do have a pretty healthy 15-page itinerary to get through. So don't be terse necessarily, but you know, the Cliff Note version.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I'll just start off and say that, you know, I grew up in such a way that I've always not only enjoyed working, but wanted to kind of measure up. I had two older brothers growing up, and I grew up on a farm. And so we had poultry houses south of here, a couple hours in a town called Hatton, Arkansas, close to Wick, south of Mena. And I just share that because that really taught me a lot of discipline and a lot of skill sets to not just want to work, but I really enjoy to work. And I've always kept several things going in my life. And so, you know, once I graduated, before I graduated, I went to the Army National Guard before my junior and senior year of high school. And that was really, I thought I was going to go to college and get college money. I was thinking about the college money, not necessarily about serving as much as 17, 18-year-old would think. So, but I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and got my training and continued to serve for 8 years. Then I was in the Army National Guard, got out, and then went into the workforce. And I started managing, assistant manager in retail. And I realized that wasn't going to pay the bills, so I got into industrial work. And because I love to work and I'm a hard worker, I advanced pretty quickly.
How did you make that transition from retail to industrial? Was there a training segment or trial by fire?
Well, it was somewhat trial by fire. I had met a few people and had some friends that worked in this line of business, and they, you know, had told me a little bit about it, and it was something that caught my attention, and it was just, it paid more.
Yep.
And so it was just, at that time in my life, I was married, had just had a new child, and I knew that cost had increased, so that was kind of the avenue.
Okay.
So I went into industrial work and did that for several years before I really started going into the management side of it and started supervising and working in that line. Never really thought about going back to college because I had tried college and actually failed several times. So I did make the grade, but about 10 years later, I realized that education would be the next step to continue to advance that in management type.
It's hard to knock something out of the ballpark when you don't see the value in it. So
Absolutely.
going to college whenever you don't see the reason for going, I can completely understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, so what happened actually in this supervisor job is we had a kind of a unique opportunity to learn to streamline the industry. And before like Six Sigma became real popular, there was this thing called TPS, it's called Toyota Production System. And it had been around about 40 years before that. And so I got involved in a group of people, and we started looking at that process, implementing it there in Nash, Texas at this particular plant. And it was a game changer for me. It made me begin to realize not just the value of systems and implementing them within a structure of inputs, but actually the people, and giving the workers a skill set to realize that if you do things in a process, you can be a whole lot more efficient and effective and not even wear yourself out. Yeah. And so it was really a learning. That's really what enticed me to go back into college and get a human resource degree.
Right. Typically, I would hold that against you.
Yeah.
Human resource degree, but
yeah.
For the spirit of what you're doing, that makes a lot of sense. Toyota was very, very famous for their lean, their just-in-time, a lot of stuff that they introduced when it came to efficiency. With the organization you were working at not having that in place prior, what was that lift like for that organization to bring that in and make that commitment and get the buy-in?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we had done things for so long the way it had been done that there was about a 2-year process before there was real buy-in. And once we started implementing, we didn't implement it in the whole organization. We started in this particular part called remelt, which was kind of the beginning of the process. And once we started doing that, then everybody could have buy-in because they saw the effectiveness in it. It increased. We went from just you're talking about $30 million a month producing to almost doubling that within a 6 to 8 month period. And so that was a pretty big eye opener to where they started getting the other side, the rolling mill and the other parts of the plant more interested in participating. So,
and I just thought that was worth touching on, because in theory, say there's a large organization that could stand to become more efficient, that historically has not operated in that manner. You've had some past experience tackling very similar initiatives.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the challenge, and kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and looking at something like this that I would have never thought I would even consider doing. Because after being involved in several meetings, just about every meeting for the last 3 years, I can see the breakdown in efficiency and effectiveness, and I can see why the pattern is the way it is. And it's like looking under the hood of the car and being able to say, this is the problem. And not everybody has that skill set to do that. So
you can almost blame systems as much, if not more, than people in a lot of those situations.
It definitely feels that way. I don't think we have anybody necessarily that I would call bad people in leadership in our city, but I would just say they're not really leaders, they're more managers. Like it keeps it alive,
status quo,
but it's not growing.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that said many a times, that the goal is to keep the wheels on the cart, and I think that's pretty short term.
It satisfies the day, but if there's no plan for the future, and I have my grandkids here tonight, and I think about them, what is like, they're in Germany overseas, but I hopefully plan that they plan to be here one day in Fort Smith, how do we keep young people? And I don't see us really focusing in on that. That's kind of one of the things that I want us to look at changing.
Yeah. So. And when you make those trips to Germany, you should really check out some of the apprenticeship programs that I hear Germany and a lot of places in Europe are excelling in. And in the U.S., it's kind of now coming in vogue as far as investments, and the current presidential administration even putting a lot of initiatives into, that's a big workforce overhaul, but we haven't seen much of that manifest in reality via apprenticeships just yet. So just keep an eye out while you're there for us. Kind of brings up those secrets back.
To look into it next time there, so yeah.
So what brought you from private industry? You spoke about the economic need for kind of pivoting in your life from retail and getting into industrial. So I wouldn't think it would be an economic driver this time around that would lead you to ministry. So what
It was
led to
quite
that
the opposite.
transition?
At that particular time, and I tell people this part of my story, 30 years ago, you're making somewhere close to $100,000 a year, and you leave that to make, about $24,000 a year to go in ministry, was quite a step the other direction. But at that particular time, I was having our children, and I just knew that something needed to change. And so I could work in that industry work. I could work as much time as I needed to, but what I found is it didn't really fit the bill. It didn't really fulfill what I was doing. And so I began to really pursue, my walk, with the Lord, and pursuing that's when, these doors of opportunity opened up. And, at that time I was close to 30 years old. I had really achieved a lot at that time for someone just kind of off the farm, but I still wasn't educated. I still hadn't really, found that purpose to get that education yet. And so, but I realized that I really like people. And it had to do with a lot of the people that I worked with. They were going through struggles. One particular man in particular that I worked with he was about a 6'5". He looked like a giant to me. He's about 6'5", 300-something pounds. You would think he'd be like a linebacker for football. But as I began to shift kind of my avenue to go into ministry, he was kind of a motivator for that, because I saw his life pretty much falling apart before my eyes, and I wanted to help him. And there was things that I began to do and that really impacted that. And so that was kind of a natural process that began to take place.
Okay. So how long have you been in that capacity now?
I've been in ministry 24 years. Now, the interesting thing about the ministry I'm in, I've been here in Fort Smith 18 years. Actually, this month will be my 18th year at the particular church I'm at, Midland Heights Church. I've been in ministry 24 years. And so what I would say is, because where I'm at in North Fort Smith, it's a large older building, but when I came, there was a handful of people. And so ministry in North Fort Smith has always been very unique. And so there's always been opportunity to do other things, because I pretty much was full-time, but I was paid part-time. So I had to look for other ways to financially be able to keep doing the ministry and the things that I need to do as a husband. My wife's here somewhere, so.
So what do you think it is that has led you into this next shift in focus for your life, your mission, your calling? What is it that's leading you think, probably not out of ministry, but in a different capacity?
Yeah, it's definitely a different capacity. What I pinpointed, it goes back to a conversation I had a little over 2 years ago. I saw something happen to another ministry in town, and it was like there was a lot of things trying to be canceled, like cancel culture, what we call it. And I saw a lot of negative things on Facebook for this particular ministry. It was actually at Evangel Temple. And I've known Pastor Don Hutchins and their ministry for years, but I never really heard anything bad, okay? And so it was like thousands of comments. And so, I just kept looking at that thinking, this is not good. Yeah. And so I actually picked up the phone and called him. I'd never talked to him before. And he didn't answer the phone, so I left him a message. But he called me back within 4 minutes, and he was crying on the phone. And he said, this is what he said. He said, I'd like to think I'm someone that has impacted the community and been prominent in the community. And I've been in ministry over 30 years here. He said, but not one other pastor called me when this was going on. And so he said, I'd like to meet with you. And I said, sure. And a couple of weeks later, he came over to where the church is there on North 6th Street, Midland Heights. And we got to fellowship and meet. And it was interesting because I'd been going to meetings at that time about 6 months. And my first question was, how do you get rid of someone on the board? Yeah. That's what, And he said, well, it's doable. And this is what he said. He said, are you thinking about running for mayor? And I laughed. I said, no. And he said, oh, okay. And he shared with me that he was, and that he had already gotten signs to run for mayor. And I thought, well, good. You know, I'm glad, you know, someone's going to run. I can get behind that. And, you know, really, I didn't know him, but that was the first time we met. And I can't forget him asking me, are you thinking about running for mayor? And then a year and a half, you know, he passed away a year ago in February. And actually, he told me that same day that he was retiring. And and I said, well, what are you going to do when you retire? And he was retiring, and his last Sunday was Father's Day, which is coming up this next weekend. And I said, well, what are you doing the next Sunday? And he said, nothing. I said, well, will you come preach at the church? And he did. And so he was going to come back a year later and preach, but he ended up going to the hospital and passed away. So that's kind of what got me going.
Yeah, Don's been good in my family over the years. I have nothing but praise and respect. We need stickier tape, Dan.
I know. Where's my help at?
We already fixed that side, but that side seems to be fixed.
That's all right.
It stayed hanging this time. And I kind of want to stay on, linger on the faith side of things for a minute, because I think it's really important.
Okay.
And also call out a point that, speaking of negative comments on Facebook, they just seem to reproduce without any rhyme or reason, but they certainly exist.
Sure.
And a lot of them draw attention, unfortunately.
Yep.
But I know a lot of people are nervous whenever somebody who, I think Don probably dealt with this a lot, whenever someone who is a pastor or, you know, a big part of their, who they are as a person is their faith.
Right.
And they're very public about that.
Yep.
And some people, you know, well-informed or not, will take issue with that. And they'll bring up separation of church and state, which I don't think makes sense in this context. I think that's very out of context, you can quote it. But I know something of this nature will get brought up.
Sure.
So I'm wondering, I'm sure you've had considerations about how to address being a mayor for all four Smith, and not just those that are a part of the faith that you subscribe to and practice personally.
Sure.
How that would not alienate people who maybe don't practice the same faith, because we do have a fairly diverse faith-based community. I'd say probably predominantly most subscribe to being Christian, but we do still have a pretty rich, diverse what people choose to worship and express, whether it's atheist, agnostic. I mean, we have Muslim, Hindu, all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
So how does Dan, a man who very boldly proclaims his faith, how do you square that with the needs of a mayor to represent those of all faiths?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great question. That's been one of the challenges because, you know, I've heard people say, well, we don't need, you know, a pastor or a minister to do that. And, you know, it's not a problem. And people have their points of view. What I would say is that, in my past experience working with people, because one of the things that I share with not just being a pastor is I actually founded a recovery ministry, you know, for people out of prison or out of treatment centers. And we've gotten people from all walks of life, as you can imagine. And because of that, you know, we wasn't there to condemn or judge. We're there to help. And so a lot of those people that we were able to help, and, you know, they might have been there for 6 months or they might have been there 3 years. It really didn't matter. You know, a lot of those people didn't ever attend church. A lot of those people just attended recovery ministries and things like that. And I can just tell you that we didn't treat them any different. You know, this is the thing about when you really care for people and care about community, there's always that common ground that we can adhere to. I mean, I just have found that I want good things for people. And, you know, I tell people there's 3 types of people that you're going to meet. There's people that are for what you're for or against what you're against. But then you'll find these rare people that are for you. And there's just something about me, I'm for people. And that's people in all walks of life, and I want the best for people. And I celebrate when people win and people do good. So that's, you know.
First of all, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
And absolutely. Also, thank you for the work you're doing in recovery. That's important work. I've ran a transitional employment program last 18 months or so, and dealing with the very same type of individuals in very, very same situations. And the amount of love and support those people need it's almost endless. It's like a vacuum. You just have to pour and pour and pour. I know how much work goes into that, so certainly thank you for that. I also wanted to bring up, again, we're going to stay on the faith thing for a minute, because I think it's very interesting to me. You had a couple of, speaking of Facebook, posts on Facebook.
Yes.
I scrolled through there to get some ideas and try to prepare for this, and a few things were reiterated over and over, so I thought they were worth bringing up and allowing you to kind of air out further and elaborate on further. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. You spoke about your role as a pastor being at the gates and what that means to you. How does the role of mayor, in your mind, align with the role of a pastor in a similar way?
Yeah, so I mean, I think when you have someone, and you're referring to actually a Proverbs, and which is a book of wisdom in Proverbs 31, it talks about someone that has the character that is not only seen in them, but seen in their family. And there's something to be said for a leader that not only cares for people, but is willing to, even like go, if you're willing to be a part of the army, you're willing to go fight for freedom and protect people from all walks of life. And so what I see as a pastor or for mayor is that you're willing to deal with the hard issues. And I believe there's some real difficult things that we're facing as a city, especially with our school system and things like that, that if it doesn't take a strong leader with some vision, then we're going to have some, we're an outlier. I don't know if people know this, but we're an outlier as far as per capita, the people, children that are in foster care and people that go to prison in the state of Arkansas and per capita. And so there's something that has happened, I believe, here, and it's not something that's just happened overnight. I believe it's been ingrained here for some time, and I feel like it's going to take someone not just with a leadership ability and a skill set, but with integrity and character to stand strong, because it's going to be somewhat of a battle for whoever gets that position, especially if it changes to a strong mayoral.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that as well for sure, because that's very relevant. Yeah. I completely agree, and I bear at the point that 2012 is when Whirlpool finally closed its doors. Yeah. And that UAFS did a study that came up with 10,000 regional jobs that were lost because of that plant closure. And a community at the time of 84,000 or whatever it would have been. Yeah. That's a massive hit, a massive hit. And right on that, we got the single largest per capita opioid epidemic. And then the foster care crisis was number 1 or 2 in the nation, not just statewide, but the nation. Yeah. It was insane how bad we got hit. And I feel like maybe in the last year or two, maybe the last 3, we've really almost started to climb out a little bit. Sure. But that was a gut punch that took this community back 2 decades. Yeah. Easily. And I mean, we wore it. We wore it. We were ground zero for a lot of state first initiatives in foster care, opioid task force, a lot of things that came to Sebastian County. That's not a badge of honor. That's like we're on life support for a while. In the last census, there were 5 counties that had population growth. Somehow, miraculously, Sebastian was one of them, but by like
1%.
Yeah, it was less than 3,000 people in 2 years. So we're hanging on by a thread. Yeah. And in that time, Fayetteville just hop, skipped, and jumped right past us, and we've lost ground. And I think a lot of the frustration that so it's bubbling up in a lot of different ways. One of them is obviously the cry for the change of government. I think is the most palpable form of that frustration. But that's what a lot of people can't put necessarily their finger on what's wrong. They just know something's wrong. Yeah. And this is probably the most vocal I've heard this community and engaged, at least on social media engaged, sure, following and being a part of the conversation. Yeah. So it is a really interesting, potentially tipping point, I think, for our community. So it is. And I think you're hearing that. Yeah. I think that's probably what has kind of inspired you to take this seriously and take this lead.
It is, and you bring up tipping point. That Malcolm Gladwell book that he wrote. When I first came here, the first 3 years, there was a lot of graffiti in Fort Smith. And we started a graffiti removal team. And what we did is we gave cards to the police officers. And when someone would get graffitied on, they would give them our card and we'd go remove the graffiti. And if we could get out there within the first week, typically it wouldn't happen again. Because what would happen is...
Broken window thing.
Yeah, we would get rid of it very quick. And so there are things within the system. I also did foster parenting for 8 years. Several children came to our home, but you know, what they do is great in part, but every DHS worker is overworked.
Yep.
Okay, and what I'd say in sharing that is I see a lot of that same type of system happening within our city structure. Okay, they're not necessarily saying they're overworked in every department, but there is work that has kind of become busy work, but it's not effective work to really affect change.
Sure.
So
now, why mayor instead of a role on the city board?
You're asking a good question. I think it goes back to whenever I met with Don and he said, "What about mayor?" And you know, I'll just say, you know, there's 6 of us running. Someone's going to end up being mayor. Okay. And my thing is, if let's say I don't get mayor, who's to say I don't run for a board position? You know, I'm going to be involved. I've been involved the last 3 years. I'm going to stay involved because what I've seen too much and I know too much at this point. And if someone doesn't step up and make a change in this city, it's going to get more and more difficult the way things are for our city, especially with the school system. I mean, we're closing down 5 schools we've already closed 3. We're fixing to close down these 2 other schools. It's fixing to change a dynamic, especially in the part of town I am in, North Fort Smith. You know?
Well, you brought up the school system now a couple of times. Let's dive in there. I mean, let's explore those thoughts, some of the concerns you have, what's happening.
Yeah.
Where you want to start on that topic?
Well, and this kind of is tied to the city because whenever I started going, not just to the city, I started going to school boards and, you know, I heard about it first at the city board meeting about a noise mitigation grant that we were going to get. It's going to be $5 million, and they were going to get in conjunction with the school. They were going to come up with this $5 million. But the thing about grant money is you need seed money to get grant money. Okay, and so they needed $500,000 to get that $5 million. Well, so I went to the school and I asked them where they were getting the $500,000 because you can't use other grant money to get more grant money. And it was a red flag for me. Well, I still really hadn't got my answer. Now, the last school board meeting that I went to was the last one of the year. They're talking about already spending this money and doing this. And so I've FOIA'd a lot of documents. I'm, you know, in the process of going through those from the school system. And typically when you FOIA, you don't get everything you want.
Yeah.
You get a lot more than you want, and so it takes time. But tied to that is there was things that I heard at the city board meeting. And at that time, there was a particular person that was not just involved in the city here, the board meetings, but this particular person was on the school board.
Okay.
And so since then, she stepped off and someone's replaced her, but it still leaves me with a lot of questions. And really it goes back to kind of what I see happening in our government is there's deals being done that aren't always disclosed. And they're going to be disclosed. Yeah. You know.
Yeah,
we're going to find out
to a few individuals to try and get them to come and talk with me about the Fort Smith Public School.
Yeah.
And it's been crickets or a polite declination. So that gives me pause.
Well, when you have the leader who basically used us as a stepping stone to get to a bigger position, or him and his wife get to a bigger position, it leaves gaps. And then when you keep the same plan that they had, when you get the next superintendent in there, to me it causes an issue. And I'll go back to just a little part on that, because this is what I found. When you close down schools in a poverty area and those kids have to go to other schools, it creates a funding influx, and it's all about the money. Our kids have become a money project, not necessarily trying to take care of our kids.
Yeah.
And so by them closing down Trustee and Spradling now, the kids will have to go to other schools. Their numbers increase, but it increases with the poverty area kids, and then they get more funding. And what are they going to do? It wouldn't surprise me if we hear about a new school being built out towards Chaffee Crossing or something like that, where the city is growing here for, within.
Yeah, they've been talking about that for a while, ever since FCRA began. That brings up an interesting tension, though. I want to explore this with you, and maybe you've given it some thought, maybe you haven't. But in the conversation around what the school board is voted to do, closing some of the schools, consolidating, moving students, that seems on paper to me to be a move based on efficiency, which is something you're very big into.
Yeah.
So where do you delineate public good, public service, and efficiency? Where is that line drawn? Maybe.
When it affects families, and it create, a lot of the kids that were at Trustee were walking to school. Now they're walking even further, and you can't even get the bus ride. Some of these kids are little. They can't even get picked up by the bus unless they're over 2 miles away.
Yeah.
And so you start affecting communities and families, it begins to be a problem. And that's why I feel like someone needs to step up and say something. And so, yeah, efficiency and effectiveness is great, but at the cost of what? And see, I think there's a very delicate line that you have to look at there.
Do you have any back in the envelope math, just high level, not as a subject matter expert, but ideas of maybe some other pivots for Smith, the City of Fort Smith Public Schools specifically, because they're a different entity than the city. Sure. But that they should have maybe looked at exploring, or you would have liked to have seen them explore further?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because back 20 years ago, we tried to do something similar in the state of Arkansas. We tried to consolidate the small schools and make bigger schools, okay?
I went to 1A school, so
and after seeing that and being a part of that, it has not saved the taxpayer $1. It's cost taxpayers more. And so the state, they thought they were doing something right. And that's exactly what I see happening, what they call right size. They're calling it right size.
Yeah.
It's a great company term, but the right size of what they're doing isn't really right sizing anybody that's using the system, but it's right sizing the pockets of those that are in the upper echelon positions. Sure. I mean, if you can pay a superintendent $300,000 or $250,000 and give them all this extra money, I mean, it's like Carl Gafton, that was our city administrator. He was in the top 4 paid city administrators in the nation, top 4.
Wow.
And why? Because he had experience of consent decrees, which actually cost us I believe it cost us almost $1 billion for him to have that job, because he went up there and he made people mad, and then they didn't want to work with our city. Okay, and then to try to save face, he went and focused all of his time and energy getting Ebbing here, which in a sense is great. It is, but it kept them busy, focused on all these other things, not the job we hired him to do.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. I didn't know he was top 4. Now, additional context, and most people are probably aware, there's not that many city administrator forms of government, though. They're not nearly as normally set up with city as the strong mayor form.
right.
So city administrator, I believe there's only 2 in the state of Arkansas. So top 4, it seems egregious, but there may only be a handful of them left across the nation. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues. It's been vacant for 18 months, and if that's our form of government,
Somehow we're still surviving.
It's interesting. I digress, though. That's not what we're here to discuss this evening. We'll touch on it a few times, I'm sure. So another verse from Jeremiah: "Seek the peace and prosperity of the city, for if it prospers, you too will prosper."
Yeah.
What does a prosperous Fort Smith mean to you, look like to you?
Well, to me, it's keeping the younger generation. And if we don't have jobs, and if we don't have the infrastructure to keep the young generation, and I've talked to a lot of young people, and it's interesting because a lot of them want their voice to be heard, but they're not at the table to be heard. And I can understand after going to the board meetings for 3 years now, I can understand why no one wants to go. Because, I mean, honestly, until they recently changed the structure to where you can speak at the beginning of the meeting, sometimes I'd sit there 3.5, 4 hours. And by the time I got ready to speak, I was pretty upset, you know. And so, and at that time you didn't have 5 minutes, you know, you had 2 minutes. So that change, you know, may have helped, but we need young people to get involved. And the only way I believe young people will get involved is give them a seat at the table.
And I've got a whole point marked to discuss that with you, because I saw that was part, and I think that's very interesting. It's something that needs to be discussed. I think that's a two-sided coin, being a young person, formerly a younger person.
Yeah.
I was told when I was really ambitious in early 20s by a man in really good words of wisdom that sucked to hear at the time. I was trying to make some things happen. He pulled me aside and said, "Man, I love the energy. Nobody's going to listen to you until you're at least 35. At the time, I was like 21 or 22. I said, "I don't have that much time. What are you talking about? Like, I've got ideas now."
Yeah.
So there's also something, I think, to young people having some humility, learning, going through an apprenticeship and something so that they can have something of value to add to the conversation, that I will cast that stone at some of the younger folks that I don't think they have a lot of that as much. I think they graduate high school thinking they have all the answers for the world without ever paying property taxes. And so, you know, there's two sides to that. But I do really, because losing young people in the brain drain is a very real thing here. So I am interested in discussing that with you. But as a former young person, I felt like I needed to stab that in there. And one more verse, which is actually one of my favorites as well, Proverbs 29:2, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. Yeah. I've always really liked that. What does moral leadership in that regard look like in practice in the offer of mayor specifically? So we've had the mayor's prayer breakfast for as long as I can remember. Sure. There's been at least a theatrical display of righteousness. Sure. So what would it look like in practice that maybe you perceive as, and maybe Don perceived, maybe you guys even talk about this, that maybe that office is lacked?
Yeah, when I think about this city and I think about all the different leaders that are leading churches but aren't involved in going to a meeting to hear, I can't pick on any of them but this guy, because that was me. And until I went, again, because of the social media thing about our water leaks, you know, they were going to give us a water increase. And I thought, well, that's interesting that they're going to increase water, and I've had a water leak in front of my house 7 years. And so I thought, I'm going to go to that meeting, and my wife and Kurt, you know, we went. And I thought, really, because there was thousands of negative comments about the water and the increase, I thought there'd be 1,000 people there. I mean, that's how naive I was in this meeting thing. And I went, and there was 15, and half of them were board members. And I remember listening about the water leaks, and they had all these great charts up there, which later on, several months, we found out that they didn't really disclose everything. But all the charts were there. They had these talking points. And I stood up and asked the question, there has to be a cost to all the water leaks in town, okay? And at that time, the water leaks were averaging over 1,000 water leaks a month, okay? Now they've got them down, you know, somewhere below 100, so.
I was told from a very reliable source that they would wait before they got 4 or 5 calls on a leak to respond, because the backlog was so great, they knew they wouldn't be able to get to them anyways.
Yeah. So going back to your question about integrity, I heard that night from the city administrator that water leaks didn't cost us a dime. And all I could think in my mind when I heard that was, this is untruth. And if we have the person that's running 1,000 employees in our city speaking this kind of untruth over something so simple and think someone's going to buy it, we have a major problem in the city. And that's where it all began. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, that's a bold statement to make.
Yeah.
that a water leak doesn't cost money?
It cost, I know
Or
business.
negligible or something?
Yeah, it was unrealized cost is what it is, because no one's actually paying for it, but you are, I am,
Yeah.
because you're having your water treated and it costs. So it only, those water leaks are somewhere only around $11 million a year, I think, originally. Now what it's come to, what they were costing us, so.
What I always like to, because we have a tendency we're discussing the reason for new leadership, so we tend to focus on some of the ugly sides of it. So I like to hit pause every now and then throw it back the other way. What are some strengths of Fort Smith and its people, the community?
That's it. I mean, that's what, when I think about the strength of Fort Smith is the people. There are people here that have been here. I met this gentleman right over here. What was the name again?
Frank Rogers.
Frank Rogers, yeah. Frank, I met him, and he was telling, he moved here when he was 17 years old from Corpus Christi. And I couldn't believe this to be true, so I'm not calling you a liar, but he told me he was 80 years old. Look at that man and tell me, do you think he's 80? He looks young, so.
45.
Yeah, exactly, so. But to me, someone that's been here since 17 years old, that is committed here, that's being a part and is willing to come out and listen to someone like me that's saying, I want to take a position that I would have never said a couple years ago that I would consider taking, is worth it to me. Because if we don't get involved and get the people involved, if I get the position or not and y'all don't get involved, it's not going to change anything. It's going to take the people getting involved and being the change. And at this point, it's a risk to me to get involved this way, but it's worth the risk, because I see there is a potential here. And like today, my son, my family's in for Germany. We went to Bass Pro. It opened up 3 weeks ago or whatever, 6 weeks ago. I hadn't been yet, but when I got to go, I mean, it's actually pretty nice. And those little things like that, even though I know how it got here, I know a little backstory, there are some things that I believe potentially can create people to move here. There are some things, we have most cities that have rivers and utilize their rivers. Yeah. We don't. Okay, so there's lots of possibilities here, but we're going to have to look at focusing how to do it differently. We can't just focus on downtown either. It has to be the whole city.
Have you followed the discussion on the river and the development and the Corps of Engineers and all that stuff, and what some of those holdups have been?
Yes, in part. I mean, I've got bits and pieces, so and I do realize that a lot of that is going to take time, but without a vision and without a plan, we'll never get there. And I don't know that someone has.
Without vision, the people perish.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's what I've seen. We've maintained a lot of things, but we haven't dealt with the real, to me, the depth of the issue.
So again, as a pastor and now looking at this role of mayor, I think an interesting thing that I would be curious about and other people would be curious about as well. And I consider myself a man of faith as well, so not attacks, just curious as here.
Sure.
Curiosities rather. But what would thoughts be on something that maybe, you're morally opposed to? That would be otherwise economic investments, like I don't know where you stand on casinos, but a casino on the riverfront. Would that be a project that you would fight for because of the economic impact that could potentially have and help to activate the riverfront investment down there? I mean, what are your thoughts on sort of areas like that?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about strip clubs or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting you brought that up. I had someone mention that a couple weeks ago to me about someone had tried to get a riverboat and things like that up here in the past. I'm not a big fan of that, honestly. That's not something I necessarily would say I'm for. It's not necessarily something that I would stand against. If the people in the city said this is what we need and this is what would do it, but I'm definitely not. It's not something I'd participate in and be involved in. Okay. But again, I'm for people. I'm not for what you're for or against what you're against. I'm for people, and so I believe there's a way. Let's take and turn the table. What if we were able to get a creation museum here? and get it on the riverfront and create economic development here with the Creation Museum and kind of a faith-based, would that be something that the city would get behind and people would get behind?
That doesn't give the Cherokees health insurance, though. There's a trade-off there.
Yeah, there is everything, with everything, there's that trade-off. And so, you know, and I have to look at it from, you know, my past is, you know, I've helped people in the recovery community for, you know, 14 years. And, you know, one of the issues that I see downtown is we have a lot of issue with homelessness, okay?
Yeah.
And we have a part of the issue with homelessness is people in substance abuse and mental health. And so I think that has to be looked at. I think there are things, if you're struggling with something and it's in your face every day, it's going to be very hard to overcome that.
I think a lot of the population is not from here locally, though.
Right.
From what I understand, it has to do with I-40 bus routes and a lot of, also, there's arguments that we have a lot of services for those populations that make it pretty easy to be homeless here. And there are some of those arguments.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of a lot of the ministries and the Hope campus and things like that, but I think that's an interesting side of the discussion that I don't ever hear get very much air in any public context. Do you have any thought on that?
I have a whole lot. I don't
want to share.
I mean, I'd share it all. I mean, I think there's a way to fix it, and I think there's a way to fix it quick. But it's going to take an effort, not just from our city. It's going to take an effort from people that are involved. But when you got an organization that gets grant money like $5 or $6 million through COVID, and it's gone, that's a problem. Okay. And what I would say is there is a way to get grant money, which would be like seed money, to where it could create an effective opportunity to help homelessness to where it could be self-funded. I'm not a big fan of grants. And one of the things that I've seen is a lot of people will get that and they think there's always going to be a bunch of money and a bunch of opportunity there. It's a deception, and you're tied to things that you really don't want to be tied to.
Yeah, you're dependent.
And I've seen that not just in that type of deal. I've seen that in a lot of the decisions that our city has made. We've gotten so many grants that I've asked them, what all grants have we got, and what is not being funded anymore that we have to take care of? I haven't got the list yet, but I'm going to tell you, it's going to be very high, and it's going to be very costly. Because when the grant runs out, you still have to take care. Even if you get grants for parks, the 38 parks that we already have, if you can't get another grant, then you still have to pay people to go mow it and upkeep it.
Well, I've seen this happen in government a lot, to where it turns into a welfare state, death of 1,000 intentions, and then it picks up financial burdens that it can't maintain.
Yeah.
Because a lot of organizations were great and were grant funded, they lost the grant funding, and then there was a big outcry. And so the city or county or whoever stepped in to provide that service, when it is not the role of the government to be providing many of those services.
No.
And it's the death of good intentions.
It is.
Yeah. I haven't heard anybody talk about a solution to the homelessness. I've heard a lot of people complain. I'd like to air this out with you. You may be the only one I'm talking to this whole session that actually has some thoughts on any of this.
We know that the next day room has recently moved over here. It's fixing to start expanding over here by Hope campus. I would like to see, in conjunction with that, a guideline and some rules for the city to where if you're part of the homeless community, and one of the programs that they have at Hope campus is that they will help you get jobs, and you can advance from one area to the next. When they do that, the next step is them transitioning from that area to their own place, okay? Where I believe you could create a structure and guideline to keep them part of that program to where they're not leaving that facility other than work, and they're getting a skill set, but they're not wandering downtown, and they're not always down here. And I believe because of that, it would increase the effectiveness, and I'd love to see nonprofits get involved in a training center to develop skill sets.
And that's what we're doing with our transitional employment program, but grant funded. And
and I don't have a problem with grant funded. if it creates a skill set to where once you have developed them in that skill set, that they can start helping fund it.
Yeah.
To where it's not always relying on that, because that's a broken system.
Yeah.
You know?
Accountability for that population. Because a lot of people are bleeding hearts that have those jobs in social services.
Yeah.
And so accountability is really hard for them to stick because they'll bend over backwards to help that person.
Yes.
And so finding someone that's got both of those abilities and competencies is a unique skill set.
Yeah, for 12 years, we had 8 homes and we had 40 people that we were helping, okay? And it wasn't funded through the churches, mine and my wife's, ministry, and we were just doing this, but we've learned a lot of ways not to do it.
Yeah.
And that, first few years was really challenging because we wanted to throw in the towel several times. But as we, did it, we learned a lot of ways that could work and did work. And we still have people connected to our lives that have gotten their families back, gotten their kids back, gotten jobs, gotten careers, gotten educated, all kinds of different stories, And it's just been, it's been somewhat challenging because I'll be honest with you, when they start talking about the Hope Campus coming in, I knew it wouldn't work. Okay, and the way it's run right now, and I know Casey personally, it's not gonna work this way. Okay, there's a lot of change that has to happen. So, I mean, honestly, it would almost be better if it closed down and then someone else took it over. And I'm not saying from his point of view, I'm just saying from the point of view to where it's easier to bring something back to life than to take a system that's already broken.
Right.
And try to fix it.
Have a phoenix transformation, you have to let it die.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on how it might be able to become self-sustaining?
Well, I believe that you're going to have
a service like it, maybe if not it specifically, but that serves that population.
Well, I believe that there's always this opportunity with the right leader and the right team to where you can get a functioning system that can create that new life. Okay, whether we're talking about the Hope Center or whether we're talking about the city, or we're talking about really any business. Okay, and so with the right leader that has a vision, it can happen. But people don't always want to participate for a longevity of time and give money to something if they don't really know why. I mean, it's easy to talk about the how and the what, and a lot of people are good at throwing money at things, but honestly, it goes back to vision.
Well, people like to go to black tie events and galas. I think that's mainly why they throw money at things.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, look at California, right? Almost infamously, the more money they give to the homeless population and services, the bigger the services get and the worse the problem gets.
Yeah.
So the incentives are misaligned somewhere on a very foundational level there. So it's very hard to find somebody that's actually willing to do the job so well it puts them out of the job.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to have with that type of work, is somebody that's really doing it to end the problem and not continue to carry that on.
Yeah. Sure.
Because again, that goes against natural human incentives, at least economic incentives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very interesting.
So if I did get to be mayor,
yeah.
what I would do is I would get with not just a few of the organizations that are participating, but I would spend a bit of the initial energy in getting a group of all ministries together.
Yeah.
And get those leaders, because a lot of them, what I found in talking to them, they have these little parts that they're participating in, but they're not willing to go any further.
You would call me and I would introduce you to my friends in the transitional employment world.
And we would get it done.
And we'll take the show on the road.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have that to discuss tonight. I just thought that was worth pushing on because I haven't heard many people talk about that. Let's switch to change of government. You've been very much a proponent. I'm asking everybody that's a proponent of it the obvious question: why run for an office that seems neutered of any executive authority?
Yeah.
When you're so involved in changing the very structure of the role that you're running for?
Well, what I would say to that is what appears to not have actually has. And see, when you have someone that is considered mayor and has influence and has the connection, there are a lot of things that get done behind or under and around, and that's the way it is. And honestly, if you had someone that was in that position that is willing to not just be transparent, but be accountable to that position, it could be done in such a way to where it could help people get more connected and know that there is a chance for the city to change. The way the council's ran right now, I mean, it's a miracle that we're getting anything done. Because when you go to a meeting and you got this 3 against 4 all the time, there's never a lot getting done, okay? And so, but also there's no accountability. And so, you know, there's that, the issue goes before even you know, when you start thinking about just more people are involved now than ever. Well, I'm sure that there's been times that people were involved 10, 15, 20
Sure.
years ago, right? And then they didn't get the change. And so I'll just kind of pick on, you know, the downtown, you know, like when we start dealing with downtown, the downtown issues of change, the central business district here, I don't know if y'all know this, but they tax themselves. They've levied a tax to where they get $250,000 to $300,000 a year to spend on downtown, okay? And so it's a pretty neat tax incentive to where you can tax yourself and then get to spend the money. And it's perfectly legal to do this, but it also is connected to the city. But in being connected to the city, if you go sit in that meeting, basically sit in the meeting when they talk, the city doesn't decide what to do with that money, even though they're levying the money. Those people on that business district get to decide what to do with that money, okay? And so sounds real good and sounds real nice if you're on that committee and you own a business downtown, okay? Now, I share all this because there was a $4 million building that the city just bought, that is our city offices, that was costing our city $38,000 a month. What are we doing with the $38,000 that we're not spending to rent that building now? What do you think we're doing? No one knows. Well, why not? Well, because I'm pretty sure it's being used. And it's probably being used in renovations, probably used in these different things, but $4 million we spent to buy that building. Well, when I went to the meeting, they were talking about the downtown guys financing that meeting. This is kind of how it went down. They were talking about going to the bank and borrowing the money to give to the city to buy that meeting. And I thought, that's a problem. So I raised my hand and I said, hey, that doesn't sound right. Why would y'all have to finance this for the city? And they were like, basically, who's this guy? You know, and I've just got questions because I know that if you're buying a piece of property that's worth $4 million, you can go to the bank and leverage that property and get the money yourself, okay? So it didn't make sense to me. But what does make sense to me is that I would love to give the city a loan for $4 million and get 10% interest every year on it. That does make sense to me.
Good business.
Okay, well, it is if you're just about yourself. But if you're really about the people and really care about the city, you do it different. And that's a problem. And see, I believe that right there shows us under the hood of what's been going on, not just a few times, it's been going on for a long time. So.
And to play devil's advocate here, CBID, I know a lot of the funds that they raise, they invest in the ambassadors to police and keep Fort Smith protected, help with the homeless population down there, beautification efforts. So it's self-serving in a way that, to your point, it's a democratic process whenever they pass that tax.
Sure.
Not everybody in the CBID agreed with it, but democracy rules and that.
I don't have a problem with it.
So.
I have a problem that people don't know about it.
Yeah.
If everything's above board and you're doing everything, but you know.
But the CBID is not the city.
No, I realize it, but it is connected too. The city has to organize that and has to be connected.
I think they have a fiduciary role with it.
Yes,
in some way, but
yeah.
I know the downtown dudes get a lot of flack, and I've got to play devil's advocate on occasion. They also invest a lot in this community.
They do.
And I know that over the years, we have had a loud minority that has ran off.
And if any of them watch this is what I have to say.
Yeah.
I have to say, if you want to be involved, take a position of leadership so you can be seen, so people know what you're doing. And that, to me, that's integrity.
Sure.
To me, that's character. And I would tell any one of them, because, they're, in some ways, every one of us that's running for mayor right now have been discredited in some ways by them, okay? What I would tell them is, if you got a problem with us running, you step up and run. Let's see, but they probably won't do it because it doesn't pay enough. And
Well, I don't think everybody's calling is also to run for office. I think there's
No, I agree.
ways you can serve your community.
There's lots of ways to serve, and there's lots of ways to participate. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed. I just have to every now and then come to their defense because I know they're not all bad.
no.
I know there's a lot of good about them as well.
We're here in a building tonight because of one of them.
But to continue on this train of thought that we're kind of pulling over, talking about efficiency, budgeting, roads, infrastructure, you would mention wanting to solve some of these without increasing taxes. That sounds like pie in the sky type dream. So elaborate on that for me a little bit so we can decouple that from fantasy and kind of pull that into reality. What are some ideas you have?
Well, what I would say is if we were able to go back and develop the right DNA, not just in the bottom, but at the top, to where we could actually start training people within a structure of efficiency and effectiveness, I believe our tax dollar would go further, okay? But it's funny because they don't want to really cut our taxes because they want to be able to keep spending our taxes. And they've proven that with the water slide thing over, not just one or two
Our
times.
taxes, we're like a frog in boiling water right now in western Arkansas. They're getting higher than they should be.
Yeah, and so there is a way. Now, I know you know this, but maybe not everybody knows this. We're one of very few cities that have a sanitation
Award-winning.
that is set up the way it is, okay? And because our sanitation system actually makes money, and see, it's profitable, but guess what? When something makes money and it's profitable and you have money, what do you want to do if you're in leadership and you see these things you want done? You spend the money. And I have an issue. I don't have an issue with spending money. I have an issue on spending, they were talking about building a wash station that's $1 million that they have money set aside for. When we got to the meeting, they were talking about it. They asked about the internal parts of the wash station. And our acting city administrator, Jeff Dingman, he says, yeah, I believe that encompasses it all. And come to find out, no, it didn't. It just encompassed the building itself. Well, it's going to cost another $1 million to get the parts inside the building, okay? And so when we get to meetings, you don't know that, and you're the acting city administrator, that's a problem. And so it just seems like, and if you haven't been to the meeting or watched them, I encourage you to come because those things just keep cropping up.
So, but our landfill is unique with the methane and the way that they're able to kind of convert that. Do you think there's some other opportunities? I'm a big fan of anytime you can convert a cost center into a revenue generator,
Sure.
You're ahead of the game. That's how you succeed. Are there any thoughts you have about other departments within the city that could, even again, just high level, not as a subject matter expert, to where you think there's opportunities to transition from cost center to revenue generator or neutral? Any of those?
Yeah, I think that this is what I would like to do. If I became strong mayor, we would look at every department. And we would look not just at the top and heavy part, but all the way down. What I've found is I've had so many people reach out, and I'm sure other candidates that are running for mayor that work in the city that are afraid to say anything. Those are the boots on the ground. They see these issues. They have great ideas. We have a lot of people in the workforce that have great ideas, but no one will listen to them. I've been going to the meetings 3 years. No one's ever really asked me my background or what skill set I have or anything.
Yeah.
And I've thrown out ideas, and I'm like, man, I really do want to help the city. I've got on the website, if you could go to my website, danielwilliamsformayor.com, I've built and looking at the finances, the first quarter, and it's kind of got a running scale to where you can slide it and you can see very real numbers where you can cut costs and things like that. It'd be very easy to do something like that every month. to have that to where it could be looked at and you could actually see what money's spent.
Is it one of those that has like cheap, fast, good, and every time you push one, the other two go over? Like, you
Yes,
can't get all
and you can lock, but you can lock
sacrifices.
them. You can lock them out, and
Yeah.
you can, if you just want to move one of them. But it's really, to me, I feel like any citizen in Fort Smith, Arkansas should be able to look at the city and see exactly where we are. And see exactly if there's things that we have vision for, what it's going to take to get there.
So in the current form of government, out of these ambitions, and I think reasonable and laudable, what's feasible?
In the current form of
In
government,
the current form of government, you as mayor, you win the election, January comes around, what of these things that you would like to see do you believe you can start putting your finger on the scale of, or
I'm
taking on
gonna,
change?
well, you know, I'm gonna put my finger on everything I'm putting my finger on. What I would say is the feasibility, obviously, is because the council is the one that makes the voting decision. But we, you know, after sitting there and listening, this is what I observed, this is what I know, is that the mayor and the city administrator have run this city. And those guys that have the vote up there, they're in some ways being told what to do. They're influenced. And they don't, you know, they have the position, but they're not running the city.
And it could just be as benign as personal relationships and they trust what they say. You know, it's not necessarily malicious, I don't.
No, I would say it's a lazy, lackadaisical, you know.
Laissez-faire.
Yes, yep, for sure.
Okay, I can see that. Well, again, you know, the city council members, in their defense, and I don't want to give them too much, but it's not their full-time job either.
I agree.
They've got full-time, so a lot of times I've listened to a lot of meetings, used to attend, I'm jaded, I'm one of those. But I'll watch the live streams and check in on those, and you can tell that they don't have all the information a lot of times. And some of the times, I'd say a majority of the time, I think they call it out, that they don't have all the information they'd like to have to make this decision.
Yeah.
And I think that seems to be, I don't know if that's just endemic in running something as complex as a city, or if I'm sure there are solutions that you have.
Look, if you were in any business and you got someone coming in as the chief financial officer and you ask for a number and you can't get the number right there on the spot, and it goes on all the time, that's an issue. And that's what I've seen. Every time we come up, there's always been a lack of what you know from Thursday before Tuesday, what's the meeting's about. You should have everything you need plus some, you know.
So are you familiar with the concept of steel manning and straw manning?
No, I'm not.
So a straw man is if you're trying to debate an idea,
Okay.
you make the weakest form of it possible, and then you attack that.
Okay.
And a steel man is you make the strongest form of that idea possible, and then you attack that.
Yeah.
I prefer the steel man. 98% of people take the straw man.
Okay.
So to steel man the current structure of government we have.
Yeah.
And maybe even steel man some of the concerns against what the implications of a strong mayor would be with all the other positions also elected, potential special interests having more executive authority.
Mm.
You know, one of the things, I'm still on the fence about this because it's being touted to me as a silver bullet. I don't necessarily have faith in our leadership. It's not like a change in the form of government is suddenly going to bring new leadership to vote for that exact role.
Right.
So to steelman some of those concerns about what hesitation people may have, because there may be adequate support to get it on the ballot, but is there adequate support to vote it in? We don't know, which the most recent renewal of the school millage, I think there was 36 votes for, 24 against. So people showing up at the polls is an issue all in itself, really. I wouldn't even say that's an indication of how the public at large really feels, the polls. But to steelman that, the current form of government versus the strong mayor and steelmanning some of those concerns. I mean, do you have what are your perceived value of what we currently have? What are some of the perceived legitimate concerns that we are going to have to overcome if we do change this form of government?
Well, there's a couple of things with really both sides of it. It's like anything, that change isn't always easy. And so there are definitely challenges. If we go to the strong mayor, it's going to be challenges. One is whoever gets to be mayor right now, going into that, it has got about
2 years.
It's got 2 years to either show himself qualified or herself qualified and be prepared to run again. So, I mean, and you're looking at, for any of us that are running right now, we're on tight budgets, It's not like we have deep pockets, most of us.
And you're not investing for 4 years.
If we go to run again, you can bet there's gonna be a lot more money, because you're talking about, if it's strong mayor, it's a lot bigger paying position.
Yeah.
And
And to me, the more executive authority in one person removes the checks and balances that people are frustrated by, that almost lead to the inefficiency.
It does if things don't change in the accountability and transparency, but all that can be fixed. And I believe needs to be fixed whether we change it or not. And that's, honestly, why is so many people here tonight when you could have been doing other things? You're here tonight because you're tired of it being the way it is, are you not?
Yeah.
And so you're out because you want to be a part of some of the change. And what I would say to that is, when we get people going to the meetings, getting people involved, whether the strong mayor vote happens or not, it's going to hold them accountable, okay? And this coming Tuesday night, you got 5 minutes. It'd be great if all of y'all came with 5 minutes to share. Let them sit there 4 hours one night. Let them sit there 4 hours and not get to go home and get a little bit frustrated. And look, I'm not trying to be malicious or anything like that. I'm just saying there is a way that people's voice can be heard, but you have to go and you got to speak the truth. And this city affects your life or affects your neighbor. And for me, I'm willing to take the stand. So if it doesn't change, if it doesn't get on the ballot, let me just say this: it needs to be on the ballot this November, if it's going to be legitimate. And the reason why I say that is because that's where all the voters are going to be out. If they try to do something to get it the next year or the next year, there's not going to be as much voter turnout. I believe it needs to be on there this time.
So, do you believe you can accomplish everything you want to under the current form?
I believe it'd be a good start because what I've seen already just in my personal run is that not everybody's happy about it. That's what I've seen. And why wouldn't they be happy? Well, I'll tell you why, because I've been going to meetings and I've said what I needed to say, and I'm not afraid to say the truth, okay? Now, the interesting thing is there's a lot of things I don't even fully know. There's not full disclosure because I don't have access to everything. But I believe that scares a lot of people, because when you gain access and you're not afraid to speak the truth, then people that are in that position, they're willing to do anything it takes to keep you from getting that position.
So now, strong mayor form of government, it would go 2 years is whenever it would take account. Everybody's up for re-election.
Yes.
Say you're fortunate to win it, then regardless of this time, because now we're talking strong mayor,
Yep.
and that would go into effect. How would your strategy, how would your tactics, how would your platform, policies, goals, all of that, how would they differ from the current form of government and what you're running to?
Well, you ask an important question, because for me personally, I've just already decided it's going to be a strong mayor, and I'm looking at it like that.
Okay.
So I'm not going.
Man of faith.
I'm not going the other way, because what I realize now is that there's a reason why there's pushback as much as there is, and it's going to take a strong mayor and a strong leader with vision to go in there to help this city. And if it's not, then I don't know that it's going to work. And so that's what I believe. I'm just approaching it as if I'm already getting a position.
Yeah.
So
What do you think would be different today if we had a strong mayor form of government?
a whole lot. I really feel like if we had a strong mayor, that it would give people hope in our city again. I feel like people would start understanding what they've missed.
Well, we'll rather say we've been a strong mayor form. How would our current situation be different? Not a new thing, not new hope, not new excitement. This is business as usual.
Okay.
We've
Yeah.
been a strong mayor for 2 decades, 3 decades, long enough that it's no longer novel for us.
Right, what do you think that would look like?
What do you think today's Fort Smith would look like if we were under that form of governance for the last couple decades?
Wow, I would think that it would probably look a lot like Fayetteville. I think it would look a lot like 34, 35%. I don't think those businesses would have left, that left back then, although there was reason for them to leave because of taxes and things like that. But I believe that it would have, I really feel like that being the Fort Smith that we have been, the second largest city in Fort Smith, that we could have kept growing on that and building momentum. I really do.
Yeah.
And so it's just the way it's set up. We're set up to maintain, and what we know about maintaining is we're really failing.
So what are your thoughts on diversification of industry? We're not necessarily a one-trick pony, but we've got government for employers. We have government, we have healthcare.
Yeah.
Fort Smith Public Schools, and education. We've got, you call it logistics, it's our best. They're not running a ton of warehouses around here, but they are a good employer. Warehousing, blue collar manufacturing.
Well,
All things that are being automated, increased efficiency, increased productivity leads to actually fewer jobs. Job growth and productivity in those industries is decoupled. So that no longer is an indicator for new jobs and new hiring.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on the future, maybe the vulnerability of where we're at, or maybe the strengths of where we're at, from your perspective, having a background in some of those industries?
Well, a couple things that have happened, I guess, in the last year is we're finally doing something about the infrastructure. We finally, getting something done with the consent decree, although it's almost.
Because the EPA made us.
Yeah, although it's almost $1 billion,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna tell you, without the infrastructure, we really don't have the opportunity to grow. We don't, without the water system. I mean, we're at capacity now. We can't really talk about getting 5 new industry type businesses here because we don't really have the water supply to get it here yet. Now, the good thing is we do have at least a plan to start working on that, and we're looking at that. But it's gonna take, we're looking at, $200 to $300 million just to get the water line situation fixed up, going to where Barling is and Chappie Crossing is.
Yeah.
So without that, we're gonna struggle. And right now, I mean, if something were to happen to one of those water lines, it would be a crisis for our city. Half the water supply in our city would be shut off. And that's gonna be a big deal.
Yeah.
So.
What are your thoughts on economic development overall? We touched on casinos, that was for funsies, but I'm
Yeah.
curious. About the direction of Fort Smith, I mean, one of your interests, and we can caveat this question into that topic, is about retaining the youth.
Yes.
Or even drawing in youth. I say I was a headhunter, I do recruitment. I used to be able to pull people from Conway to Fort Smith. I cannot anymore.
Right.
They will not come to Fort Smith from Conway.
Yeah.
We've lost ground.
Sure.
So what in your eyes can the city do? Should we look towards quality of life initiatives? Because that's paired, workforce development stuff, obviously paired with economic development. They're kind of 2 sides of the same coin there. So what are your thoughts on economic development? You keep talking and referencing a vision.
Yeah.
What is that vision for you in the next 10, 20 years? Granted, maybe not in mayor office the whole time, but
Sure.
for Fort Smith.
Yeah, well, every young person that I've met has this idea that their voice isn't heard. And what it's gonna take for me personally in that position is meeting with that young person, those young people, and beginning to not just listen to what they have to say, but inviting them to the table of leaders, okay? And letting them, not just letting them voice an opinion, but be involved. And I believe there's a way to train the younger generation and develop them as leaders and business owners and things like that.
Let's explore this. I'm very interested. What does that look like?
Yeah.
More detail around that. Bring them to the table.
Yes.
Give them a voice, train them. What does that look like in practice?
Absolutely, and see what I would see is, you know, connecting. One of the things that we have is, you know, in our colleges, we've, you know, recently, you know, we've gotten not just, you know, where you get bachelor's degrees, now you get masters, now you can develop them there at our school. And so when you start giving people a potential with education, then we need to be recruiting them into positions in our city and develop them so that they have not just an opportunity to participate, but an opportunity to make a difference. And, you know, I'm looking at Casey standing up back here because, you know, he shares a lot about when he was younger, getting involved, getting young people, not just to have businesses like he's celebrating is it 10 years, your business, 10 years coming up? Not just getting them involved in business, but actually working with someone like Casey that's a leader to realize they could own the business, they could be developed in the business, or they could be part of our city. And I'm going to just tell you, young people have a lot of great ideas. We just need to listen to them. Yeah. And so I would look forward to sitting down with them and trying to recruit them to be a part of our organization, the city.
Would there be a formal group, a civic thing you would start?
I would like it to be. I would have to look at that and see what really could potentially happen, because I know you just can't invite someone to be on the board.
Sure.
Right. So, but I believe there's a way to work with the leaders in the city.
Bureaucracy is good at creating new committees, so I'm sure you can just spin up a committee or something to do that.
Yeah.
And Casey and I would both be happy to help on that. I think we got burned at about the same time.
Yeah.
Actually, got a lot of shared history there.
Yeah.
But no, I agree.
But one of the things I say about, and I don't really know the depths of y'all's story, is that you're still committed and you're still participating, and that's what it's going to take. Yeah. Because you can share something, especially with that 21-year-old, 22-year-old that has the opportunity to move to Fayetteville or Dallas or, you know, Little Rock, and you can say, no, things are being done different here, and you can not just bring them hope, but bring them opportunity. So that's what I see.
Well, Dan, it is about 7 o'clock, so we'll wrap it up and allow some audience Q&A.
Okay.
If there's any, I would like to say thank you. This has been
thank you.
A very delightful conversation for me.
Okay.
It's been good getting to know you a little bit, so thanks for spending some time. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or speak to that maybe we didn't cover?
I have a feeling someone will ask me a question and I'll talk about it all, so.
Okay, well, unfortunately, the mics are wired, so either use your big boy voice or girl voice.
If you ask the question, we'll repeat the question.
Yeah, we can do that for you guys. So we'll open it up to audience Q&A at this point if anybody has questions.
Yeah.
Oh, we do have a wireless mic.
Oh.
All right here, Kim has a question.
I would like to ask, what sets you apart from your opponents? What makes you, what can you tell others that would make you more qualified? I hear, a lot that
Sure.
you have to, be able to manage a $300 million budget, and
Yeah.
a lot of people say we don't have any candidates that are capable of doing that, in their opinion.
Sure.
What
would set me apart from that? Well, here's the thing I'll tell you. I really don't know any of them. So I can't really tell you what sets me apart. I know what I believe sets me apart, and I know my experience, I believe, is part of that. When you join the Army National Guard between your junior and senior year, you miss out on something. When you graduate high school and you go back for training, you miss out on something. I've just always had this thing inside of me that not wanted to be a part for me, but wanted to be a part for others. And what I really would say tonight is I care for the community, I care for people, okay? I'm not really for what you're for or against what you're against, but I'm really for you. And so in saying that, a couple of things, I shared I did foster children 8 years. I have a little experience there. I actually have this industry experience that I learned a lot. I went to college after that to gain a skill set. And my skill set isn't in dealing with a human resource office position. The laws, my job set is actually teaching people how to teach, training people how to be effective, not just in communication, but in succeeding in job and cutting waste and efficiency and things like that. And so I've dealt with systems, but it's not systems of just planning, it's systems of placing people in the right position. And that's one of the skill sets I have is I can work with people and I can find their gifting pretty quick. And within finding their gifting, I can help them work in their strength and not their weakness. Everybody has a what they call a working genius. And within your working genius, if you'll work in those two areas, you'll never feel like you worked a day in your life. But if you work in your weakness or your competencies, your job will be a miserable job. And what I found is the ability to help people find their working genius to be strengthened in that to where they succeed. And when you're around someone that loves what they do, what do you want to do? You want to be around them. And so, and it creates a healthy environment in the DNA of leaders all the way down. And that's what it's going to take. And I've been able to do that throughout. One of the things I didn't share back, I'm 55 years old. I didn't tell you all that. But at 40 years old, I began to buy property in Fort Smith. And in about, I kind of had this goal that I was going to end up with 20 properties. And I was going to, one day be able to have a retirement, because the ministry I'm a part of, they actually stopped paying in my retirement for me to be able to stay there because they couldn't afford to keep basically paying me. I basically gave up my retirement many years ago. And so I've stayed there, and within 2.5 years, I bought somewhere around 40 properties, okay? And, but on a basic income, it was, I'm just gonna tell you, I call it a miracle, okay? because I'm not that smart, but within that, what I learned is how to do things in an effective manner. And I'll tell you today, I don't have 40 properties. I realized that was way more than I could handle, so I sold a good portion of those. But I still do have properties that help us do what we're called to do, help people, okay? And so, and I bring that into this this time, because when you invest that way in the community, you want to stay. But also you realize the kind of the deficiencies in the organization of the red tape of communities, and it really upsets you. And so there was kind of like a decision that I had to make back in the day to where, will I stay in Fort Smith? And pretty much by me running for this position, I'm saying I'll stay. I've been here 18 years and I'm committed to be here. I feel like I'll retire here. I feel like I'll be here as long as we still have the opportunity to be here. And so I just share that with you because I have this background, and one of the things that I was able to do during that time of just investing was work with people every day. And one of the things I do right now today is I work with a group, for a long time it was just men, but I work with a group anywhere from 30 to 40 people every morning, 1 hour. And we meet, and I'm helping them learn values and morals, from biblical principles. And I'm still connected to the court systems. I help with Veterans Court and Mental Health Court and Drug Court. I'm very invested in this community, and it's interesting because a lot of people don't know who I am because it wasn't really ever about me. And I think you found this with many of the candidates that are running. It's kind of hard to talk about yourself and tell a little bit about what you've done and how you've done it. But in this position, I have to, and I'm willing to. But I also know there are costs that come with that. So, thank you. Joey.
I guess it's still on. So
Let me write this down.
we talk about a strong mayor form of government.
Yeah.
But we've had a very influential mayor over the last 8 years or so. And we've also had a very influential city attorney, and we failed miserably. We raised a ceremonial mayor to a $700,000 budget. And that was recommended by the city administrator and approved by the board. And my thinking is if we had an elected mayor, that first of all, we would not have almost bankrupted this city. $800 million that we owe for a consent decree.
Yeah.
And they won't even talk about how they're gonna pay for north of $500 million for a water transmission problem. That's over $1 billion that can bankrupt this city. If the taxpayers hadn't to pass their tax last time, we were in severe problems, and we were probably gonna be taken over by the federal government. That's how bad it got.
Yeah.
And so if those two issues were solved, we would be in a much better position, much better position. But they've been hearing about potential water crisis now for almost a decade and a half, and they've done nothing about it. And now they don't want to talk about who's gonna bear that responsibility.
Sure.
So, I mean, how are you gonna deal with those issues? Because we've got one crisis after the next.
Yeah.
My theory is that they're all in the bed together. This is the perfect example. You give the mayor, George McGill, $700,000. It's suggested by GEFCA, approved by the board, and then he goes out and spends hundreds of thousands of dollars illegally. I mean, literally unconstitutionally.
Sure.
And they will not one of them will recommend a local audit. Because right now, we've proven $170,000 of illegal spending. McGill's under investigation by the Attorney General now. But this local board, for the last 8 years, they won't even request an internal audit. How did an internal audit how did the city attorney miss the illegal spending? I mean, we're talking probably close to $1 million over the years. And how can a guy get a $700,000? So the question is, are you gonna be because they're on the same bed together, they're under the same silk sheets together, and that's the problem. We have no checks and balances.
Yeah.
We're not getting a strong mayor. We're getting a mayor who's gonna butt heads with the city board of directors. We're getting an elected city attorney who's not on the same side of the bed, under the same sheets, with this, because they're all in bed together. And there's no checks and balances, and over the last 8 years, we've had nothing but tax and spend.
Joey, what's the question?
Well,
Yeah, you're the one to talk, Dave.
yeah.
So the question is,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do to change that dynamic?
Yeah, and you ask an important question, and what I would say is, you're exactly right. They have fallen into this pattern of doing it the same old way, and we know that that's not gonna work. So what I would do is I'm gonna push back. And so, if I'm a strong mayor, that's definitely, we're gonna be able to get, hire those positions that need to be hired in, right? And if that doesn't happen and I get to be mayor, then there's gonna be a push of transparency in all departments. And if it ends up being to where we need to audit those departments to where we can find out what is really going on, we're gonna have to do that. And honestly, it's gonna require more than me just doing that and saying that. It's gonna require the citizen being involved and saying, this is what we want done. Because y'all run the city. Y'all should know that. Y'all run the city. Your voice should be. Now, you put them in position. If it doesn't change, what you need to do is you need to vote for people on those seats up there on that council. You need to be voting for those people that will look into those situations. So that's what I will tell you, you know. Casey, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'll ask. I mean, you know, it's on the minds of a lot of us.
Yes, sir.
You already know what I'm gonna ask you, but how do you separate church and state? Because
Hey,
you're a pastor.
You missed out, you already missed out.
Coming to the first half, brother.
No, you're right, yeah, but I'm here to serve, as the mayor, okay? And, you know, what I would say to that is, I'm here for the people. I'm not for what people are for or what they're against, and so whether someone is a churchgoer or not churchgoer, I'm for them. And so, and that's what it's gonna take. Whoever gets this position is gonna have to be for what the people are doing, because you, in this position, you work for the people, so. But there's a hand right up there.
Let me just follow, I'm sorry, just real quick. So everybody says that though, but
I know.
over time, it creeps in. For example, when Don Hutchings.
I understand.
He liked to have meetings in his church office.
Okay,
And so that, that's not right, and I wanna make sure that isn't happening. You decide to, or you win.
yeah. Well, I believe that we're getting to know each other, and I believe that as we get to know each other more, you're gonna understand that you can trust what I have to say. And I realize that's what I'm doing over the next few months, is just trying to build some kind of foundation of trust. Without trust, we can't even get to the conflict. If we can't even get through the conflict, we're not gonna get to any accountability or any of that, so. But I appreciate it, because you've always been a straight shooter, and that's what I'm gonna be. I'm gonna shoot you straight, so, thank you, sir.
All right, hold on just a second. I don't promise this.
Yes, okay. We got one up there next. Yes, sir.
Testing.
Yes.
All right, I'm Stephen. Good stuff today, you really got the wheels turning a little bit, so.
Good deal.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So, water seems to be an important issue. I will give them some credit. I had a $700 water bill one time, and they gave me a chance to fix whatever caused that, and they credited me, so I have to give credit where the credit's due.
Yes.
Yeah. My main question though, we see all the stuff about the mega data centers popping up all over the United States.
Yes, sir.
I've no doubt that Fort Smith eventually will be Buchanan. It just seems like the kind of place that will be. I just want to know your general thoughts on that.
My general thoughts are, you know what? We don't know enough about those data centers, and there's a lot of risk, I believe, that we should find out before we even consider it. My other thought is, we don't have the infrastructure right now to supply the water. I just recently saw that it took like 1 billion, I think it was Google's data center that took over 1 billion gallons of water to cool the system. I do realize we're right by a river, okay? And I'm not sure exactly what qualifies for clean water, but there's a reason why we don't get our drinking water out of this river either, okay? So those are all things that would have to be looked at. I would definitely think we would have a lot more to look at before we would consider that, is what my recommendation would be, 100%, okay? But thank you for the question, it's a great question.
Okay, I have 3 questions.
Oh no, I better write it
Well,
down.
I have a lot, but I only am gonna ask 3.
Okay.
Okay, first one, what do you think about the transportation for the city and how can you fix it?
Are you talking about the city buses?
Yes,
Okay, so do you have anything particular about the city buses?
I don't ride them, but I was thinking about taking a day where I do so I can see. But I've heard from my neighbors that don't have cars, they don't have air, they just pass you up on the stop, they don't
Okay.
really stop, and they just look at you.
They are very limited, they don't reach a lot of Fort Smith, the stops are not convenient, and individuals that need to rely on them for work often can't accept jobs they may otherwise get hired for because of bus schedules, and then they only run like, 8 to 6 or 6 to 6 or something?
Well,
So it is a big problem, the public infrastructure.
That's a great question, and I appreciate kind of the more details of that, because one of the great things is we do have a bus system, okay? So I want to look at that good part, but I definitely know there are these other parts that, as far as the bus stops and things like that, because I've talked to a lot of people that have to ride the bus system, that have been missed, have had to wait, and things like that. So personally, what I would do is after hearing this, would look into that, because I believe anything can become more effective and efficient, but it takes the right oversight and the right leader in that department. So I would start at the top and see what, I would ask them, and then based on what they would get, I would start digging into the system and looking at it. Yeah.
Okay, and my next question is, since COVID happened, everyone is inside on their phones. What would you do for the community to bring people out of their homes to congregate with other human beings?
Scavenger hunt.
Okay, yeah. Go back to the kisser, scavenger hunt, or whatever. No, that is a great question. I do see more movement outside than I have in some time, just really in the last 6 months. And I know weather, it's warmer weather and things like that. So, but I do believe that there are things in this city that we can do to get events and get people involved out doing that. And I would love to do that. I don't know if y'all saw just this past, yesterday or the day before at the fairground, they had an event, a fundraiser, and a lot of people went out to that. And one of the things that we're challenged with in the city is communication, is getting the communication out. It's even like, we spend an extra, I don't know if y'all know this, $1 million a year on our convention center. We subsidize as citizens, okay? But typically we don't see all that information. We have to get better at communication and getting that out for events and things like that. And I believe if we could do that, more people would be involved.
I feel like I should add, again, to Steelman, the convention center. A lot of convention centers in larger cities lose money on paper, but the draw is supposed to be from all the events they have at the centers
Sure.
that bring outside tax dollars in. And I do believe it is underutilized from that standpoint.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we've had it 15 years, I believe. That's a lot of money though, so.
And my last question is, if you were getting $1 million, what is something that you would do for the city of Portsmouth?
That's a great question. Again, I'm for the people, but I'm also not for just giving things away.
Like, would
Water
you create more jobs or more businesses? Would you create more jobs?
What I would do is I would use that as a seed to start something, and I believe it would go back to a trade to develop a system of trades to help someone learn a skill set to where they could actually find a job. And I believe that there's people in here that are willing to work, they just don't have a skill set to find a job. And there's a lot of things being done through apps and things like this that's actually developing people to get high qualified and certified in jobs that I'm recently finding out about, because I help people get jobs all the time, okay? Knowing people and knowing jobs. And so that's where I see a great need, because I deal with that every day. That's probably what I'd start with.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. George.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Let's say the board changes in November and we get 4 or 5 conservatives on there,
Yes, sir.
and 4 or 5 of us decided to vote to sell the water park.
Yes, sir.
Would you veto that?
Would I be for that?
No, would you veto it?
Veto it.
Would I veto the sale of the water park? No, sir, I would not.
Why?
Why would I veto it?
No, I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying, but you support selling the water park.
I do. We're not in the business to make money. Our city's not in the business to make money off its citizens.
Yeah.
We're in the business of helping our citizens.
You said the convention center loses $1 million.
Huh?
The convention center loses $1 million.
Yes, sir.
The animal shelter.
Loses it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Water parks losing, if the truth were known, probably $1 million.
yeah,
A lot of money.
yes, sir.
Okay, last question. What, the mayor has a discretionary budget, I think, of $700,000, Joey?
It was, yeah, somewhere.
Until you decided you were in a financial crisis last year and you cut it down to
What do you think is a reasonable amount for the mayor to have a discretionary fund for like 4th of July festivities, for, city functions?
Well, honestly, I'm not sure that the mayor should, if he's the way it is right now, it should have that 700,000
Right.
discretionary. Because I believe there's work that can be done through the board that can participate. And he can, you know, just like every meeting we go to, y'all vote for the mayor to sign off on things all the time. And there's no reason why that couldn't be part of the way it's done now.
See, the board has no idea what the mayor spends.
I understand that.
They don't tell us anything.
Yeah, but see, that's where I believe everything should be if there's a 20-year-old citizen that wants to know what the mayor's spending money on, he should be able to get on there and find out what he spent money on that
Yeah,
last
but the
week.
board can't even find out.
That's a problem. And that's one of the things I would,
That's right.
that's one of the things I would fix immediately.
That's not true. You can FOIA that in a heartbeat. After
Well,
3 days.
yeah, but Joe, let me tell you something, you're never gonna get the right amounts. They're gonna vary it, don't you worry.
$700,000 budget, George. The city administrator suggested it, and you guys are the one who approved it.
I didn't approve the budget.
You did. You didn't vote to approve the budget in 2025.
I think what we're gonna do, I think what we're gonna see is there's gonna be a change coming. Some people are
Yeah,
gonna
there
like
is.
it, some people aren't gonna like it, okay?
That's-
And this is my hope, is that we all in here that wanna see it change the right way will like it. Because I believe that's what's gonna happen.
Well-
I believe there's enough, people in our city that care enough about what's going on
Yeah,
that are getting involved.
but I'm gonna make a motion tomorrow night, put on the ballot for the next deal, for people to be able to vote November 2026.
Good
I
job.
appreciate
And
it.
I'm sure I'll get a second from two conservatives.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And I'll just say, George, I do appreciate that, because I believe it needs to be on there, and I believe it needs to be in the leadership of the city that are setting that, not just counting on the citizens to make it happen.
Exactly.
We put y'all in that position by voting for y'all. Y'all should see that there are enough citizens that care. It needs to be on there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. There's Andy has his hand up down here.
Here, we're just right here.
Right? Okay, great.
I met Dan Williams about 30 months ago. He helps facilitate a veterans advocacy program. What he's not going to say, I'm going to tell you. He works daily with these vets. Even opens his facility where they have parties before 40 people that are in attendance of this. He does an outstanding job. Everybody keeps saying pastoral this and meetings at his office. You may go to his church, but you'll not see him in the office. He's a hands-on guy. If you've got a problem, he's going to come fix the problem with you, not talk about it. His custodial pastoral ability, he knows everybody's name in his church. Okay, it's not just a church, it's a community. I just wanted you all to know the in-depth personality the man has. I've known him for 30 months, he's a phenomenal man.
I didn't have to pay him. Andy had okay. Yes, sir. Roger.
My wife and I are curious
Yes.
about these $5 buses that float around town.
Yes, sir.
How many, is anybody counting?
How many people are riding the bus?
Yeah, because it looks like nobody.
We have a lady over here that rides the bus. Can you tell us where you ride the bus? Can you tell us about how many people are on the bus when you get on there?
At least about probably 30 sometimes,
So-
to like, you know, maybe 28.
Okay.
30?
Sometimes 30, sometimes 28. Are you
You're
talking
about
about the
the peak times
big,
and
the big
there are
blue bus?
slower
Yeah,
times.
I like the bus.
Yeah, okay.
That's good, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being here tonight.
Blue
Andy?
hat, right?
Hey, thanks, guys. Sometimes I just like to be heard, so I don't know if I have a question.
Okay.
But I think all city services can be self-funded. If we think about like the fire department, it seems like a cost center. But if you imagine a city without a fire department, nobody would live here. And then if you have a fire department on every single corner, we're gonna have too many. And so there's this idea of finding like this happy medium of what's the right amount of fire departments. And that goes for police stations and parks and everything else. And that's why I think that there's a sort of elegance to, this is not gonna be a popular opinion, but there's elegance to the property tax system in that there is sort of a return on investment where if you build me a nice new fire station, it will increase my property values, and then those property values will be returned to the public in the form of a property tax. So where that has become dangerous in Fort Smith, which you touched on, is in the Chappie Crossing area. A few years ago, everybody in this room almost sent me a $19 million road called Planters Road. Very proud to have stopped that. And then just a couple of years after that, Mazard Road is set to be widened for another $15 million, which also would have made me very wealthy if the city had spent that money. But the problem is that is not being discussed is that I don't live in the Fort Smith School District. And all of that tax money that you guys are sending me, and making me very wealthy, by the way, so thank you, is not being sent to Fort Smith. It goes to Greenwood. My property taxes go to Greenwood. So I think that's something to consider when you're looking at spending money out in Chappie.
Joey, do you have any idea of when the SCRA finally wraps up, how that land is going to be split up? Have they discussed that at all?
Roger, got a question? I thought you might have a question.
Any more questions? Well, if everybody would please join me in applause for our guest tonight, Mr. Ricketts.